Hello and welcome to this edition of the program. I am Imuni Amarere. What does it take to build a nation? A united, prosperous, and harmonious nation out of several nation states with diverse cultures, languages, and social systems. Nigeria, the geographical entity that was constructed by the British colonialists in 1914, has failed to evolve into a cohesive nation due largely to its internal contradictions. 61 years after political independence, its various component units have not been able to put aside their different interests to embrace the letter and spirit of nationhood. Every effort at creating unity in diversity has met with serious challenges. In the last decade or thereabout, two concepts have dominated public discourse. They are restructuring and self-determination. A third concept, precedent of Igbo extraction, has been added to them in recent times as the country moves towards the next general elections in 2023. These are ideas being pushed by different interests, but many wonder if any or all of them will serve the national interest best. Our guest today is a renowned scholar, an eminent intellectual, a political activist, and visionary. Professor Uzodinma Nwala is Nigeria's first professor of philosophy and one of Africa's foremost philosophers. He is described as one of the architects of modern academic staff union of Nigerian universities, ASU, as his former president. He is also credited with being the originator of the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC. That program, which itself is an offshoot of the then East Central States Youth Volunteer Corps. Politically, Professor Nwala has been quite active. He is said to have written the first draft of the memorandum that set up the Group of 34, otherwise known as the G34, which later metamorphosed and bettered the People's Democratic Party, PPP, in 1998, and was a key author of the first constitution of the PDP. He went on to become the pioneer director of organization and strategy of the PDP, and author of numerous books, including Nigeria, Path to Unity and Stability. Professor Nwala was a delegate to the 1994-1995 Constitutional Conference. He is a frontline leader in the movement for the advancement of Igbo civilization and president of Alaigbo Development Foundation, a socio-political organization formed by Igbo intelligentsia. Welcome to the program. Professor, it's good to have you join us.
Well, yes. Thank you very much, my old friend. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much.
Nice to be with you again.
Right. It's nice to see you again, Prof. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, we will be taking on the professor on various issues, matters of nationhood, and all of that. Stay with us. Professor Uzodinma Nwala is our guest on the program today. Prof, let's begin this way. Nigeria as a country is facing so many challenges, various challenges from different parts of the country. They on different fronts, on the economic front, on the political front, on social front, security, and all of that. One is tempted to ask, where did the rain start beating us?
Well, Emoni, There are so many points in our history when this rain has come bouncing on everybody, on us, on the system. Two ways of looking at our problem. One is to look at the roots of our problem as a people who live together in one nation state. The other one is to look at the various moments of this crisis, to identify those elements that have given rise to the crisis. But I think somehow the two are linked together. The foundation of the Republic and the various moments of crisis of the Republic. Let's take one example. During one of those several attempts to put the country on a steady course via national conferences, where leaders get together to chart a new course. Imagine that the course they've been throwing along have been the roots of the problem. Each time when efforts are made, and at times some noble results are achieved, immediately everything comes to haywire, everything collapses. Because some forces don't believe those attempts, those efforts made to hammer a unified democratic state. They don't believe it is in their interest. When you look at those forces, they are largely forces that bred from the wombs of the various nationalities. I remember the 2014 conference. At the end of that conference, Kumasi came out and said, well, they have taken decisions, they have decided a number of things which we don't believe in. However, we know where to catch them. And where did they catch them? It was at the National Assembly. Those, not only the National Assembly, but those efforts made under Jonathan, well, were kind of crashed. The same thing happened in 1994, 95, 96, during the Abacha regime. When Abacha died, after we had submitted a report to him, but what happened after Abacha died? These same forces threw those decisions into the waste paper basket and prodded the Abdul Abubakar to reject those decisions and now to go back to 1999, 79 Constitution to bring out the what you call the 1999 Constitution. Because that 1999 Constitution was in fact a Constitution written, authored, and controlled by the same forces. So I just want, as I said, when you look at this scenario, you find, as I said, two forces. One is the foundation of the Republic. The other one are those moments when this crisis erupts. The two are linked together. And the answer, if we must be honest ourselves, is to be sought in the wombs of history, in the wombs of world history. What are the forces that make for nation states, creation of nation states? What are the configuration of stable nation states? And what are the usual general causes of crisis in stable nation states? If we ask the question this way, we know why Nigeria is wobbling and may not have a steady course unless we address those fundamental elements about statehood, what makes for stability of a state. I think that is where we should be looking for this time.
Prof, you talked about forces, certain forces. What are these forces and what are the interests of these forces that you talk about?
These forces are what we call it broadly ethnic forces. They are nationality forces. Nigeria is a multinational state. We have to look at it that way. States of people with different cultures, different historical orientations, different values, and different ambitions. And that is why when you look at the history of Nigeria, you ask yourself, who are the heroes we know in that history? You mentioned Sadwana, you mentioned Tafa Balewa, you mentioned Zik, you mentioned Awolowo, you mentioned Taka, you mentioned Aminu Kano, you even mentioned Adaka Boro. But ask yourself, is Nnamdi Azikiwe a hero for the Yorubas? The answer is no. Their hero is Chief Awolowo. Is Ojukwu a hero of the Fulani? The answer is no. Ojukwu is the hero of the Igbos. Is Sadwana a hero of the Igbos? The answer is no. He's a hero of the Fulani. And in fact, today, all the pretenses of Hausa Fulani ethnic nationality have crashed. There's nothing like that. You have the Hausa nationality, you have the Fulani nationality. That is why for the Fulani, for the Hausas, their hero is Aminu Kano, not Sadana Sokoto. That's the way things are shaping up. So this is an answer to the fact that we are different peoples, different orientations, different values, different aspirations. Nationality, nation state, these are the primary units created by God. People of one language, one culture. There may be internal variations. Can you ask yourself, where are those old empires? British Empire, French Empire, German Empire, Russian Empire, where are they? They have been consigned to the scrap heaps of history. What about those federations? Let's take the Russian Federation, which is now made up of about 9 different countries, or more than that. Look at Yugoslavia. Look at the East African Federation. Look at the Central African Federation. What you call the Nigerian Federation put together officially in 1914 is an artificial creation. You bring together people of different orientation without considering their will. Without looking at the chemistry that weld together people of different nationalities. Without looking at it, without ensuring that the foundation of any multinational state is based on that chemistry. What is that chemistry? Chemistry of self-determination. Self-determination. That is until we recognize this fact that there's no way the Fulanis can hold the Igbos together as their appendage forever. Or even the Hausas, or even the Yorubas. It's impossible. The movement of the whole world history shows us that ultimately, the most natural stable state formation is that of nationalities. One nation, in the nation of one language, one culture. So that is the problem, sir. Until we look at it that way, no matter what anybody says, whether you call them Fulanis or Hus or Yorubas, it's impossible for you to hold the various nationalities in one nation. You can only hold them by force, as the Fulanis are trying to do. But that force is bound to disintegrate, bound to dissolve sooner or later by the power of the popular will of the people.
Now, let me ask this. You have described Nigeria as a multinational state. Is it difficult? Is it impossible, in fact, to build, to create a politically coherent and united country out of these multinational state structures that we have today, given all that you have outlined earlier on?
Well, let us look at the reverse process of history. If you take the case of Europe, where European nation states are now separate nationality, the French, the Portuguese, the Spaniards, the English, and so on and so forth. That is the process of world history. Stable states based on nationality. But there is also another process. A process that recognizes that no state is an island of its own. No nation state in the world can be an island of its own. There are neighbors. There are interrelationships, trade, economic, political, and so on. You also now look at the pages of war history. You see another trend emerging after many states have gained their independence, their freedom. You see another trend where nation states are come together to form a supra-international body, such as you have in EU, United Nations, ECOWAS, OAU, and so on. The interesting thing is that you hardly see any nation. They renounce United membership of United Nations very easily. Nor do you see any nation renouncing membership of OAU or EU, except Britain that says they want to stay on their own, be freer to manage their affairs and lead to the rest of Europe in another trajectory other than the kind of thing that binds them together. So, but when you look at these supra-international formations, what again is the chemistry that holds them together? It is the chemistry of self-determination. They're autonomous states. Each of them is free to walk in and out of those formations. So it is possible if we now have to obey the details of history. If we stop fooling ourselves that the Fulanis can control the rest, conquer the rest and control them, or the Yorubas or the Igbos. No. If we now accept that the only way to peace and stability in this region is to ensure that each nationality has its own freedom, enjoys its own right of self-determination, has its own legislature, its own judiciary, its own military security, its own link with the world. But at the same time, it is possible again for us to come together on a more confederal arrangement, where each of us will be autonomous in the sense I have described, but where we may have some common things binding us together. That will be a new confederal state. But it will be as loose in the sense that people are not held as members by compulsion, as you had in OAU, in EU, and so on and so forth. So these are the two processes. The old empires, where some powers believe that it is their right to control other people, that has collapsed. It dissolved on the pages of war history. But then there's this other trend that have brought them together again in a more loose, more natural association, EU, OAU, and so on and so forth. So it is possible, just like what you have in United Emirates, Arab Emirates. It is possible for us, first of all, to assert our freedom and be accorded the right of our freedom. It is possible for us to come back together on a more loose association, where we can have an association that guarantees international relations among these various states. That's the only way. So that kind of projected two processes, the one that has given right to what we have now, separate states in the world, and also the one that's given right to more loose international international states. So in the case of Nigeria, we have first of all to recognize that the ethnics have the right for their self-determination. The Tiv have the right of self-determination. The Yorubas have the right, the Igbos have the right, the Ogonis have the right, the Hausas have the right, the Fulanis have the right. When we accord these rights, accept these rights, and allow them to organize their political states accordingly, the compulsion to now come together on a more loose natural relationship will arise. But that new formation, as I said, is one where each person can walk in and walk out, not held together by force.
Now, as you are very well aware, Prof, in recent times and in recent years, three concepts have dominated public discourse, which you have also alluded to. We've been talking about the whole concept of restructuring, self-determination, and very recently, as we move towards 2023, there's been this whole quest for a president of Igbo extraction. First, are these three concepts mutually exclusive?
The context of restructuring and the presidency, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, the whole concept of restructuring, self-determination, and the quest for a president of Igbo extraction. These have been on the table for a while now. Now, are those concepts mutually exclusive? Or do they have some links?
They are mutually exclusive to a point. They are also interrelated at another level. Let's take presidency. When we were at the National Constitutional Conference of 94-95, we saw this problem. And we felt that one way of ensuring that that power shared and rotated among the zones, though we created what we call the geopolitical zones, which to me today is a little bit artificial. And we agreed that the presidency will rotate among these zones. And we believe that each zone, to a large extent, will control its own internal affairs. Just like what you have in United Arab Emirates, presidency rotates, but each unit controls its own army, its own judiciary, and so on and so forth. So it is possible, as I said, if we accept the fact that we are autonomous republics, each of us, we now ask ourselves, how can we hold ourselves together? When you put that question, the idea of how to share power comes in power sharing. And one power you cannot just share is that of the presidency. So the only way to do it is to rotate it on agreed terms of rotation. So that is one way of looking at it. That's one way of looking at it. So restructuring, as I said, addresses the not only inequitable but unrealistic federal structure we have today. What shows you how unrealistic it is the fact that somebody in Kano can try to decide who rules Anambra State, can come to decide who rules Imo State. That is very unnatural. Even when you look at America, which is one country, the governorship of New York begins and ends with the electorates of New York and with the judiciary of New York. Even when you want to decide whether a particular president won in New York or not, it is the judiciary in New York that will decide whether the winner there is Trump or anybody. These are people that have understood the fundamentals of statehood. And America has been trying to manage this in a way that looks reasonable. The states are not held together by compulsion. Each state even has its own security network. If there's crisis in New York, it is the New York security network or control that has to do with it. So I think these are two ways. So restructuring, rotational presidency, and what have you, they hang together at some level. But you cannot rotate, talk about the presidency alone when you have not talked about the judiciary, when you have not talked about the military, the security forces, when you have not talked about the economy as soon as you talk. All these have to be handled holistically. And in handling them, the principle of autonomy, of regional autonomy, is very fundamental. That is the road to the principle of autonomous nation states.
Now, my understanding, Prof, of what you have said is that there is a remarkable difference or a marked difference between geographical restructuring and fiscal restructuring. And what you are advocating is the fiscal federalism of fiscal restructuring instead of perhaps what some of those who are presently agitating for restructuring are drumming support for, which is geographical restructuring.
In money, when I talk about restructuring and address that language, I'm referring to restructuring in a holistic sense. Restructuring in the sense that the units control their legislature, they control their economy, their finances, they control their judiciary, they control all this. When you come to the judiciary, assuming we want to have that kind of a state made up of autonomous regions, when you come to that, we can have a Supreme Court within that structure. That Supreme Court will have no power to decide on cases arising in Kano or Kaduna or Rivers or Kaduna, or Ibadan. It will only deal with what we call constitutional matters, matters affecting the relationship of the various states, not to deal with individual cases of interpersonal or even interinstitutional relationships. So that is a way of looking at this. That the kind of restructuring I'm referring to is a more fundamental, holistic restructuring. It's not the kind of thing you paper and say how much will the Igbo state get from its internally generated fund, how much does it get from taxes, how much does it get from the oil in the area. What we are saying is that the oil in Rivers State will be controlled by that state, the Rivers people. And then they will decide on agreed terms nationally how much to make available to the center. The situation where you have oil blocks owned by people from the desert region or from anywhere region is so unnatural. It's worse than what we experienced during the colonial days.
Okay, Prof, let's take a short break, and when we return, we will explore this a little bit further, particularly the clamor for self-determination by certain groups in the country today. I want to explore your attitude towards those efforts or those agitations at the moment, but that's when we return. All right, my guest today is Professor Uzodinma Nwala, President of Alaigbo Development Foundation, a renowned intellectual and, of course, a first professor of philosophy in Nigeria and a frontline African philosopher. Prof, before we went on the break, we were talking about restructuring. But of course, you know that today there are clamors for self-determination. There are the people from Biafra who are seeking self-determination. There are people from the Uzodinma Republic who are seeking self-determination, and maybe one or two other groups like that who are also insisting that they seek self-determination. What's your attitude towards all those who are clamoring for self-determination?
Only from what I've said so far, you definitely can answer the question about my position. My position is that the Uzodinma people, Yorubas, were not created by God to be under anybody's control. They were created, they have a distinct language, with internal variations, distinct culture. They have their hero, they have their value, they have their history. And therefore, their demand to be allowed to have freedom to relate to the world on their own terms, to control their internal resources, to control their judiciary, to control their security, to make sure no madman, whether he's mad or not, can carry cow into their farms to destroy their crops, to control their natural habitat. That right is fundamental. The same thing with the Igbos, the same thing with the TV people, the same thing with the Hausas. The other day, everybody was talking of Hausa Fulani, Hausa Fulani, Hausa Fulani. And those who know the history keep murmuring and laughing. We're happy that today, the Hausa nationalities are regaining their voice. They are regaining themselves. And they are demanding what is their right. They are not Fulanis. They want to be on their own. To relate to everybody, not be Fulanis on equal terms. Not to live as antagonistic people with other regions. No. The House has, the song of freedom is on the lips of everybody in the country now. It is no longer the Igbos, no longer the Yorubas, no longer the TV people. That is where things are now. The demand for self-determination, the demand for freedom, freedom to decide who you are, your internal resources, control them, and freedom to relate to anybody on mutually friendly terms. That is the trend. And I'm saying that this trend will continue. Those who resist it are only the people who are interested in the bloodshed that is being wasted, the human beings that are being wasted along the coast. But eventually things are going to settle down to that point.
Now, supposing, Professor, that somehow we're able to achieve what you have described, there are also internal contradictions within these groups, these nationalities. For instance, you have said somewhere that Biafra is a multinational entity, same as possibly the Hausas or possibly the Yorubas. They are multinational entities. If and when this self-determination is achieved at this level, what do you envisage will happen within the internal groups that are seeking self-determination?
In the internal groups, like within the Yoruba nation, or within the Igbo nation, or within Biafra, or what?
Within the Yoruba nation, within the Igbo nation, within the Hausa nation, within the Fulani nation. There are also internal dynamics that are at play. If they do succeed, for example, in self-determination, what do you envisage would happen at that level?
Let's take the Igbos, for example. Assuming today we all agree Igbo nation should enjoy freedom as an autonomous state. That will not guarantee that husband and wife will quarrel, that there won't be quarrel over land cases, or some other cultural differences, that we won't get to a point where one kindred once says it's not getting its own right, or one state in Alaigbo will not say they're not getting their own right. But we are saying that such internal forces, because politics is part of human being. And politics is struggle for power. Even in the family, there's struggle between a man and a wife as to who does this or who does that. There is that. for the level and manner of resolution of conflicts within the Igbo nation will not be as disastrous as what is happening between the Igbos and the Fulanis or other nationalities. It would be very easily manageable. I do remember, if you read the book of Ambassador Oku, he narrated the history of what was happening in those those days of slavery, when some parts of Alaigbo would go to other parts for slave bread, and so on and so forth. That happened to a point. But it got to a point when the elders of Valley got together and swore an oath that that would be no more of that kind of business. And they were able to control it. And from that moment on, the section of Alaigbo that was prominent in that shape in the Arrows district, they have lived very happily with their brothers in other parts of Alaigbo. So we're saying that having a Uzodinma Republic will not guarantee that there will be no internal differences. But those internal differences will not lead to the kind of carnage that goes on today in the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Right, Prof, we are fast moving towards the 2023 general elections. Amidst all the insecurity in the land, many people are worried whether 2023 will become a reality. Now, you were one of the moving forces behind the G34 that eventually metamorphosed into the People's Democratic Party at that time. What are your concerns with that party and with the Nigerian politics today as we move towards 2023?
This network is bad. I understand you to be asking about, you talk about the parties. If you can come again, it will be clearer to me.
Yes, Prof. What I asked initially is that we are moving very fast towards the 2023 general elections. And this is amidst all the insecurity in the land today. And many people are concerned about the reality of 2023 itself. But there again, you have a situation where the political parties look very unsettled. You were one of the moving forces of the G34 that translated into the PPP, which today is, as it were, in crisis. What are your concerns and what are your fears about the politics of 2023?
Well, first of all, on the issue of the raging insecurity in the country, insecurity which is manifested at various levels and dimensions. The other day I was listening to Governor Masari, who was telling us that at some level, that national level, the major source of insecurity is from the Fulani nationality. He has accepted that. And we don't need to go to the diviner to know whether it is true or false. At that level, how do we deal with it? It's something a federal government can deal with. At the federal level, they control the borders. They control the Air Force. They control the military. If they are not able to do it, to protect us from the Fulani menace, is either the federal government is not capable of doing it, or the federal government is unwilling to do it. Whichever way, it is bad. And I agree with those who say that President Buhari has proven clearly that his government is not capable of handling that insecurity at that level. Then, of course, within the nation, we see headsmen, and some say that these headsmen are covers for the same Fulani forces menacing other regions. I think again at some level, at that another level, the regional governments and state governments have the power, if they have the way, to protect their people. By finding out the various manifestations of this insecurity caused by these people and how to handle it. And this is where you introduced me earlier as president of the Alaigbo Development Foundation. From 2016, we sent a memorandum to the 7 Igbo-speaking states, asking them to enact anti-open grazing law in the various states. And we've been campaigning for it. Along the line, we found that even Igbo states have that law. We have been campaigning on that. Beyond the state government, regional governments, the communities also have a right to protect themselves. And we keep making reference to those days when we say in my community, you dare not have any goat, any cow, any sheep roaming around within the community because it's an agricultural community. There are laws to take them. We also have village vigilantes that take care of bandits. Community had that power. Beyond these communities, individuals, families also have the power of the right of self-defense. In our community in those days, every able-bodied young man possesses double-barrel gun, as well as apparently the other things, for self-protection. If a thief or a bandit enters your house, you don't take the phone to call Buhari or call Uzodinma or anybody before you rise up to the occasion to protect yourself. So there are various levels and layers of dealing with this insecurity. I was also happy when Dr. Masari and others have said communities should organize and protect themselves, defend themselves. Somebody told me, I don't know whether it is correct, I'm trying to confirm it, that even in Imo State, where our governor, Uzodinma, many people accuse him of being a northern lackey and so on and so forth. I'm not interested in the security of the people. Somebody said that he has also advised the communities to organize their own self-defense. That is the way it should go. So I have tried to point out various layers of dealing with this insecurity. Various layers of dealing with it. So I think the right of self-defense is fundamental, and we cannot abrogate it to anybody. When people ask others to surrender their guns and so on and so forth, some of us smell mischief. And in the light of what's happening today, we now feel that we were correct. But we still insist that the various communities, people should organize themselves. I feel very happy hearing about some communities where their youth have organized prisoners and face the bandits. However, there's another form of insecurity today. There's anarchy in the land, which is very worrisome, anarchy in the land.
So, Prof,
yes,
I need you to go ahead to address the issue of the politics of 2023. We're moving very fast towards that next general election now, and the parties, at least the major parties, look very unsettled.
General election, my fear is that the raging insecurity may become a major threat to the ability of anybody to conduct election. Banditry is all over the whole place. You don't know whether it is Fulani forces, whether it's the herdsmen, whether they are criminals. We've had reports about even officials of the state organizing forms of insecurity for extorting money. We've also received reports about even town union presidents organizing to extort money. Unfortunately, by their behavior and conduct, the state governments are systematically using the power of control. And losing the power of control. This is why in Alaigbo today, you can see the kind of quagmire which we have. After IPOB had declared Monday as a sit at home, even when they withdrew it, nobody's obeying. Because that situation fans the blood, the desire, and appetite of bandits. So this is where we have a problem. And in that case, some of us in our organization, Alaigbo Declared Foundation, we are saying that the answer to this, one, the communities have to wake up, organize themselves, to take control of their land, organize their youth, and engage them in purposeful action, in activity, like farming, agriculture, instead of allowing them to roam around and falling prey to various manipulative forces. So we are thinking that if the communities organize themselves as organize and take control of their land, the agriculture, they will be able to run their affairs in keeping with the traditional value system that makes an agrarian community a truly agrarian community. It's always a value rolling within this thing. But the youth, everybody is kept busy and kept gainfully engaged.
Prof, one last question before we go. I like to rephrase this again, and it has to do with the state of the political parties as they are today. You were one of the foundation members of the PPP, for instance. Now, it doesn't appear as if the major political parties are settled enough to begin to pursue the politics of 2023. What are your thoughts?
Imon, you see, long time ago, when we started studying the party system in Nigeria, I remember one of our veteran political fathers, Ikenna Nzimiro. He called the political parties trading companies. When I left for G34, from there the dream of forming a party came in. We set sail to form the biggest political party in Africa. That's the PPP. We did a lot. Incidentally, the forces that put the PPP together was a kind of multinational force. Babanga Tukus, Chiroma, Solomon Lars, Ekwemes, and so on and so forth. We put the PPP together. Then because of my little experience and talent, my colleagues asked me to run for secretary of that party. And I was able to get the permission of my colleagues in the university, in spite of the ban on lecturers going for party. They gave me permission to go and run for that election. That election was rigged against me and Awemi. We went to court. At that time, we thought that the courts would be a bastion for defense of democracy. It was a rude shock when Kutigate withdrew from the case. And it was a man, many people told us that he was a no-nonsense judge. And his withdrawal was the tactical withdrawal. But then I realized that the judiciary in Nigeria didn't have what it takes to defend a perfect democracy. That's why I came back and started busy myself with trying to create social movement trying to be part of the people, trying to see how we can make the society safe.
For now, we'd like to thank Professor Uzodinma Nwala, who is the President Alaigbo Development Foundation, a renowned academic, a very eminent intellectual, and first professor of philosophy in Nigeria, for joining us on the program today. Well, for you, our viewers, thank you so much for investing your time with us. Join us next time as we bring you a new edition of the program, People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.